Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lydia Joy, and we are in it, y'all. We are fixed about halfway through fall in Scorpio season now. Scorpio season started October 22nd, so we're halfway through it. We just had that amazing full moon in Taurus yesterday, which really brought me back into my body in a beautiful way. I hope you felt some of that loveliness as well. And back on Sunday, November 2nd, a few days ago, we turned the clocks back for daylight savings time. And that's always quite a shift. Maybe more so than we can realize. Some people celebrate it like, oh, yay, I get an extra hour of sleep, you know. But really it's quite a thing, and initially for that brief shift, it's like, oh, the mornings are so different. It's lighter out, right? And suddenly the evenings are just coming so soon, right? The darkness. And, our bodies do feel that shift, whether we notice it or not. And so here we are, mid fall, that time when nature starts to pull inwards, right? You see the leaves falling. I hear it's still so beautiful. I mean, a lot more leaves are falling, a lot more trees are bare, but there's still a lot of color. I live in the Northeast, Zone 7B, just outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Um, it's so deliciously beautiful, but the leaves are truly falling, right? And it's that time where they do that and return eventually back to the soil. And the trees are like, they're revealing their structure to us, right? And we can see their whole frame, and the landscape just kind of like starts to just quiet down, you know? Um and how Scorpio is it to me? I saw a beautiful hawk of some sort. I don't know if it was a red-tailed hawk or what kind of hawk it was, but flying across outside my window, carrying a squirrel in its beak today. And that was, very like, wow, okay. That's not something you see every day, but it seems appropriate right now. Anyways, biologically, emotionally, and metabolically, we're meant to shift with this descent. Scorpio season brings it, the change in the, nature and the light brings it, right? We're not meant to push, right? Like to push straight through fall into winter as if nothing is changing. Our physiology responds to light, to temperature, and day length. And this is the time of year where it is changing so fast. And so I want to talk a little bit about that change. It's clearly a biological thing that we all are dealing with. I think a lot of people may have been noticing things in their sleep or energy. Maybe not yet. But it will start to you'll start to notice your mood, your appetite. It's not random. It's very, very much a measurable seasonal recalibration. And I really feel like understanding it can feel incredibly soothing, right? It's just validating. It's very helpful so that we stop like fighting our bodies and instead really just learn to move with the season in a way that truly supports our nervous system, our hormones, our immune rhythm, and even our emotional life. So let's talk about the change in light and why it matters. And this is for those who live in the Northern Hemisphere. Um, because as the Northern Hemisphere tilts away from the sun sits lower in the sky. And so daylight shortens. And the angle of light we receive changes. So even, modest shifts in daily light exposure alter how our internal clock operates. Okay, so your circadian rhythm, um, it has a master clock in the brain, right? And it reads light through retinal photoreceptors and it sends timing signals throughout the body. And morning light tells your brain it's day, and evening darkness tells it it's night, right? It's pretty basic, but those cues really regulate our, or should regulate our sleep wake timing and our hormone rhythms and our metabolism, our cellular repair, and our immune cycles. And right now, two separate signals are happening at once. This week in particular, the natural seasonal change, right? The days getting shorter, the light reducing as we move towards the winter solstice at the end of the year. But then also the social clock shift, which is the daylight savings ending. So biologically, we are built to adapt to this seasonal descent. But the sudden social shift where we change our clocks on purpose, which I'm not a fan of at all, plus the pervasive presence of artificial evening light, it creates a temporary misalignment. So people tend to notice changes, right? Sleep disturbances, maybe even like lower daytime energy, perhaps, or subtle mood dips, or appetite shifts, or more susceptibility to minor illnesses. And I want to say, like, this isn't like when this happens, it's not like some kind of like personal failure, right? It's literally just adaptation and motion in the season we are in. So what the body actually does in mid-fall when the light decreases, we have these several core biological shifts occurring, right? We have hormone rhythms change, melatonin onset begins earlier, cortisol timing and even amplitude adjust, right? So the mornings may feel slower or heavier. Energy metabolism can shift more towards conservation because our mitochondria favor repair and restoration at this time of year over outward output. And then our immune timing can recalibrate because, more resources are biologically wanting to be directed to overnight surveillance and cleanup. Gets tricky when we're not living circadianly, though. And then cellular repair increases at night. So autophagy, DNA repair, mitochondrial maintenance accelerate during longer dark phases, which means we need to honor this dark, by the way. Okay, so this isn't like all these things changing and, the body slowing down. It's not like all of a sudden you're collapsing, right? It's really a strategic reorganization. And I feel like a lot of people, myself included previously, I'm feeling pretty happy to lean into every season these days. There was a time when I would dread the winter. Right? And I think a lot of people, they start to feel that way, right? Like they're like, "Oh my gosh. Oh, the winter is going to be cold, it's going to be dark, blah 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 blah," right? And I really, believe that the challenge is not the season itself. Sure, it might not be your favorite, but you can learn. It's really the mismatch between our natural biological rhythm, right, that nature supports, and then our modern environment. It's really tricky. It's like a huge, enormous mismatch, right? So that's the core problem, that mismatch, not the season, because we have all these problems with the societal infrastructure, right? We have all this artificial light. It's dark by like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I don't even know. It's so dark so early, right? And people are leaving work, a lot of people, and they're driving in brightly lit highways and going home. And right. So you have all this evening artificial light, and that really suppresses your melatonin. Um, and then, like, we still have the same pressure to have productivity within these specific hours of the day, typically, societally, for most people, right? I'm an exception to that norm because of the way I live my life. But this really ignores the need for the seasonal downshift, right? And then we have all this, you know, because of the indoor living, even just decreasing our sun exposure throughout the year. Um, even now we can still get good sun exposure and still benefit, right? But um if you don't have that collective annual kind of accumulation where you're able to get out and enjoy the sun exposure throughout the year, you're not able to synthesize adequate vitamin D for use, right? Living inside just doesn't allow for that, blah, 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 blah. So, and then it's interesting too, because society keeps going, right? Like social rhythms try to continue at a pace that's more conducive to like summer, in terms of like the light, right? While the body is like trying to prepare for winter mode, right? So the season is doing what it's supposed to do. It's doing its work. It's nature's way, right? But our task is to stop overriding it as best we can, to the degree that it's possible in the lifestyle that we're in currently, right? So I wanted to kind of like reframe mid-fall a little bit and talk about the body's intelligence, because we are seasonal beings. Not metaphorically, biologically, we are seasonal beings. So these shorter days with the less light really are just asking us to conserve energy, to repair what has frayed, right? To integrate what has happened emotionally, to clarify what we're carrying forward and what we're letting drop, right? Like, you can think about the trees as a metaphor for this, right? And so, Scorpio season is like this descent, and it's really important. And it's like a season of beginning to step into integration of, you know, I don't know, the past 6 months or more, right? So I wanted to go back and talk about my 7 pillars. If you guys have been with me, you've heard me talk about the 7 pillars. They're, the fundamentals of human health. What I see as like the fundamental foundational pieces that we all need in place to have optimal human health. And how like the light threads through these fundamentals. If you want to go back, I've got multiple episodes on this for you. I enjoyed putting those together, so they're really good for a refresh. But the first pillar is light, okay? And we have to say darkness as well, because you can't have light alone, right? There's light and there's darkness. And that's what I'm, kind of trying to highlight here, because it's pretty much, we run on solar energy, right? But we also are designed to, thrive in the darkness as well, right? If we're doing it in the way that nature designed, right? So, you think about morning light calibrating our master clock is huge. And then darkness allowing melatonin to rise and repair to occur. So when we have, and this is just like the most basic, there's so much to go into, and I hope to do a deeper dive for you guys at some point. But when our light rhythms are coherent and we are getting that morning light and we are getting the appropriate darkness, everything organizes more easily in our system. This is huge. I can't emphasize it enough. So I am going to do a deeper dive for you guys on that at some point. And then the next pillar would be air and breathing, right? And so as we shift in the season, this whole piece changes too. For example, just breath patterns can shift, right? Like we should be allowing our exhale to be more slow, our breathing to be more slow, grounded, parasympathetic. Um, right. And so I have actually been talking to a lot of my clients about breath lately, breath work and breathing. Um, because, as we shift from a more active time of year into a slower time of year, right, we're going to have that recalibration, or we should, hopefully. Or maybe if you haven't thought about this ever, maybe here's your chance to kind of sit with this for a minute and think like, wow, how is my breathing these days? Is it grounded? Am I exhaling enough? you know, um, and water is the third, and obviously, this is a big deal. And it's interesting. I kind of noticed this since I've been going to the spring for so long, how the water differs from season to season when I collect it in its taste and even its like viscosity and all these different things about it, so but our intercellular water within us can also shift, right? Like with temperature, with the light availability, right? How the light hits us, how the light hits the water, it impacts the water. And so this is also a time of year where, the body prioritizes kind of this like restorative hydration dynamic. Um, so, we can always check in on that piece as well. And then obviously, nourishment in general, which typically I'm thinking like food. But you know, digestion is circadian. I don't know if you guys know this. And so as we shift the light, right? The change in light is so stark. You know, it's really interesting that we want to be eating in the light. We don't want to be eating in the dark. And daytime eating supports our energy and metabolism. Nighttime fasting supports microbiome repair. So, and I know not everybody can do that, eat in the light hours of the day in the winter because of their schedules and whatnot. But if you can tighten that gap at all and eat when the sun is out, that's a better um, pattern for your digestion and your microbiome and things like that. And then movement, is a big piece, obviously. Movement really entrains our metabolic timing. So in mid-fall, um, the way we move might change a bit than in the warmer months with more sun. So warming, circulation focus, restorative movement is a little bit more appropriate now. Um, and then connection, right? So all our relational connection with others, as we move in towards the winter, it's more of a time to go small circle, because it favors that small circle intimacy, co-regulation, definitely not isolation. And see, we ever need to be isolated, but kind of more of like a deeper belonging, if you will. And this is definitely something, families would have experienced pre-industry. And then our purpose, right? Our purpose, this is a great time of year to really get like into your purpose, right? Like because it shifts inward in a darker season. So you could really go within, right? And kind of like recalibrate and kind of pull in from the year like what you've gleaned, because we're heading into the end of the year, right? We're heading towards the solstice where we return to the light. So this is last 6 months, or sorry, 6 weeks of the year or so. I know it's the holiday season and, like, society is crazy, right? But really it's a beautiful time to shift inward in this darker season, right? So we have, like, this gestation, if you will, before initiation. So you're really sitting with the things that you are intended to be, do, and have in this world, like to be who you fully are. It's great because, like, we need that recalibration every year. We need that review, that internal review. So, really, honestly, it's just about the body recalibrating with the season, right? Really honoring what the season intends for us, really understanding that this is like some of these things are normal. I'm going to get more into it soon, but so we're not failing when we feel like a little slower and our appetite changing and these things changing. Like, we're not failing. We're just adapting to the season. And sometimes it's hard to do because we're in this, like, I don't know where you guys are all at, but like hopefully you're moving towards rewilding yourself in some way, moving towards nature, in some way to honor your biology in that way. But you probably, still live in the world and you still have societal, responsibilities and so on and so forth. So it can be difficult to navigate, right? And so it's just important to kind of like respect where you're at and, accept where you're at and honor the shifts, honor the season, and do your best to let the season become reparative and more grounding and clarifying, and, you know, structure your lifestyle to the best you can around these changes and the light and so on and so forth. So I just kind of wanted to come on and give that like simple little um reframe, I guess, because I feel like people get really flustered as we get into this time of year. And this is just where we are. We're in this descent, right? We're heading into the darkness. We're in that mid fall. We're getting into the slowly getting towards the winter, right? It's just a beautiful season of recalibration. So next week, I want to go deeper into the minerals and microbes piece of this time of year, right? How digestion changes in the darker months, the specific minerals that we could highlight right now, that, especially in Scorpio season, that like support our emotional depth, our detoxification, our nervous system resilience, how the microbiome reorganizes itself in this season, how it all mirrors the Scorpio archetype of release, metabolize, and transform. Because this is where that descent becomes nourishing instead of like, I don't know, some people dread it. um, so, and if you're ready to not just like understand this, but actually live it, this is the work we do inside my two client offers, Minerals and Microbes and Rewilded Wellness Coaching. So if you're interested in working with me in a deeper way on your health journey, you can check those out in the show notes, those two options. And I just, I want to encourage you to go ahead and just like take a breath, you know, let yourself just like drop into your body for a moment because your biology knows this season and you don't have to force anything right now. So we'll go deeper next week. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. Until then, just be gentle with yourself. Let the season work on you. And I'll see you guys again real soon. Take care.